In 1867, a man walked into a mountain valley with nothing but a broken boot and a list of things he still knew how to do. He never left. This is the letters collection with Sedalia. Good evening. You've found your way to the first letter. I'm Sedalia Voss, and tonight I want to share something that arrived, as the best things do, without warning. A journal, slim and water-stained, found tucked inside the wall of a mountain cabin during a renovation in a small Tennessee Valley town. The man who found it passed it along to a friend, who passed it to another, until it found its way, as lost things sometimes do, to exactly where it needed to be. The journal belonged to a man named Calhoun Reed. We know almost nothing about him, except what he chose to write down. And what he chose to write down was honest and lonesome and quietly extraordinary. I've taken the liberty, as I will with all our letters, of giving his words the voice they deserved. This is his story. These are his letters to no one, and now, tonight, to you. Pull the covers up. The fire is lit. The valley that kept him. Part 1. The Trail Without a Name. September 4th, 1867. Walking for 11 days now. I am not complaining. Walking is just putting one foot in front of the other. I do not yet know where I am going. The war has been over for 2 years now. 2 years, and I am still not entirely sure what to do with the silence it left behind. I had grown accustomed to the noise of it all. The drums, the orders, the constant business of survival. Then, one day, someone signs a paper somewhere, and the noise just stops. And you are left standing in a field with a rifle you no longer need, and a rank that doesn't mean what it used to. Corporal Calhoun Reed of the 44th Tennessee Infantry, one of the few remaining. Just a man now. Just a man walking a road with no name. I am heading west. West because east is where I came from. I cannot go back east. I cannot go back to a farm that burned, to a town that looks at me the way townsfolk look at men who came home when others did not. There is a particular kind of silence a community reserves for the living. I have had my fill of it. West it is, then. September 9th, 1867. Something happened today after I left the road. I am not yet sure how to describe it. I followed a narrow trail over a high ridge. My feet chose it, not me. All morning, the trail led me through chestnut and hickory trees. My pack felt heavier with every step. By midday, I was talking to myself the way a man does when the silence gets too big. I had heard the whistles of wild turkeys when the trail crested the ridge and the valley just opened up. I stopped walking. I am not a sentimental man. The war had seen well enough to that. But that valley, the way it sat, folded between the mountains, like it had been placed there, purposefully. A river ran silver through the center of it. The late afternoon light came in sideways, turning everything the color of old honey. I stood there in silence. Felt like, I don't know, recognition, maybe. Or that something in my chest just let go after being clenched like a fist for years. I have found something. I am not yet sure how to describe it. Part 2. The Cabin at the Water's Edge. September 12th, 1867. The valley has a name. Harlan's Hollow. The family it's named after mostly did not survive the war. There is a small community of locals here, perhaps 60 souls. There's a mill, a church, and a general store that doubles as a post office on Tuesdays. The people are cautious with me, as people in small places tend to be with strangers. But cautious is not unkind. A woman named Mrs. Myra Adeline Pryor, who runs the store with brisk authority, looked me over when I came in for supplies. She asked me 3 questions in rapid succession. Where had I come from? What had I done before the war? And did I have any skills useful to a valley? Apparently satisfied with my answers, Mrs. Pryor told me there was a cabin downriver that had been sitting empty since old Harlan's son went north and never came back. She said I could lodge there for the winter in exchange for work. I asked her, what kind of work? She said, whatever kind needs doing. That is the only honest answer to such a question. She shook my hand with a firm grip that left no doubt she meant what she said. The cabin is small and in some disrepair. The door hangs wrong. The roof needs to be patched in a few places. But the hearth draws fine. Good enough. The cabin sits close to the river, so close that at night, lying on the narrow bed, I can hear the water spilling over the rocks below. It is the most continuous, most patient sound I have ever heard. It does not demand anything of me. It simply eddies and flows. Inside, the cabin smells of old pine and wood ash. Pleasant, especially when the air is crisp. I have restrung an old rope bed left behind. Despite the crude furnishing, I have slept better the past 2 nights than I have slept in years. September 24th, 1867. My days have taken shape quickly. I rise before daybreak. The air at that hour has a cold edge to it, a sharpness that clears the head. I build a fire in the hearth from the previous night's coals. I boil water for a hot sip to warm my bones or for thin coffee to satisfy my morning thirst. A small comfort. I'd mended the roof as my first priority. A few pieces of wood, a few nails, and some pine tar worked nicely to patch the gaps. I have since turned my efforts to mending fences on the property. The posts are old. Many have been heaved by past cycles of frost. The posts lean at odd angles. I dig them out with a spade, repack the earth in layers, and tamp it down with a boot heel until the post stands true. My back aches from the labor, and yet strangely, I feel more like myself than I have in years. There is something in the simplicity of this work. A post that leans is straightened and becomes right again. The results of my efforts can be seen and measured. I have nothing left except for effort. On the second day of this work, I met a farmer and neighbor named Gideon Marshall. He lost 3 fingers on his right hand at Chickamauga. He seems to have made peace with his past. We do not speak of the war directly. We speak around it, the way you would speak around a fire, close enough to feel the warmth, distant enough to avoid getting burned. He told me today that the valley has a way of keeping people. I asked him what he meant. He said, "Men come through here, meaning to pass on through. Most of them don't." I asked him why. He leaned back and turned his gaze to the river for a long moment, as if seeking precisely the correct words to speak. "The river," he said finally. "Once you've listened to it long enough, you can't hear yourself think without it." I did not have an answer for that. But walking back to the cabin that evening, boots caked with mud, I took in the light that glowed amber over the western ridge. The river reflected the sun's rays in pieces. I thought about what it would mean to stay here for a spell. There's a good weight in the bones from honest work and in letting people know your name again. I thought about what it would mean to put roots into earth that was not scorched, to actually choose a place rather than simply stop moving. It has been a long time since I have thought about such things. Part 3. What the River Said. October 4th, 1867. There is a girl, a child, I should say, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, who appears on the riverbank most mornings when I am fetching water. She sits on a particular flat rock that juts out over a slow bend, dangling her bare feet, watching the water with peaceful, round eyes. Her name is Clara. She is the granddaughter of Mrs. Pryor, who I have now come to think of as the unofficial governor of Harlan's Hollow, a position she holds with grace and iron. Clara does not speak much, but she watches everything. Last Tuesday, she appeared at my cabin door, which I had repaired and righted the week before. Clara was holding a jar with something in it, which she extended toward me without preamble. I looked at the jar. Inside was a single crawfish, very much alive and very put out about the jar. "He came from the fast part," she said, as if this explained everything. "Is he yours?" I asked. She thought about it. "He was," she said. "Now he's yours." Then she turned and walked back toward town through the long grass, her feet still bare. I stood in the doorway of the cabin, holding a jar with a crawfish in it, quite bewildered. For the first time in a very long time, I experienced the warmth from being given something without any requirement attached. No debt incurred. Just a small creature in a jar, offered freely by a child. I put the jar on the windowsill for the better part of the morning, then released the simple creature into the river near Clara's flat rock. The crawfish was gone in an instant. I left the empty jar of water on the rock, a simple reminder that there is still some good left in the world. October 16th, 1867. The first cold came down from the ridge last night. I woke to frost on the window glass and the river sounding different, more deliberate somehow, as if working harder to flow downstream. I have been here 6 weeks now. Whilst I was in town yesterday, Mrs. Pryor asked me, without looking up from her ledger, whether I intended to stay through spring. I replied that I had not yet decided. She said, still without looking up, the Harlan place could use someone permanent. The cabin is only part of it. There's 12 acres, the river frontage, and a root cellar that's better than most. I did not say anything in return. "You'd be doing me a favor," she said. "I'm tired of watching that land sit empty." I have been thinking about it all day, about what it means to claim a place, not merely collapse into one, about whether I can allow myself the grace to build something after having helped unmake so much. But tonight, sitting at this window with the frost gathering at the edges of the glass and the water darkened silver below me, I found myself thinking about spring, about what the valley must look like when the trees come back, about whether the fishing is good in the fast part of the river, where Clara's crawfish came from, about what it would mean to know a place through all 4 seasons, to know it the way Gideon Marshall does, so well it becomes part of the way you think. I have one word in mind. Maybe. One word. But it is the longest word I have written in 2 years. October 27th, 1867. The days have grown shorter. I have been splitting wood, cords of it. Gideon sometimes joins me with a silent nod. The axe is a good one, well balanced, and the wood splits clean in the cold air, the halves falling away smartly. The wood pile outside the cabin is of decent size. The cabin is sealed well for winter. I have stores of dried fish, picked berries, and apples. I now keep a few hens for egg laying. My hands have become calloused. The skin can endure most labors now without complaint. I find I am grateful for this in ways I cannot fully articulate. Epilogue, a note from Sedalia. The Journal of Calhoun Ellis Reed contains 43 more entries. By November 1867, he had purchased the property from a distant Harlan cousin in Knoxville for back taxes and a modest sum. By the following spring, he had broken 2 acres for farming. He lived in Harlan's Hollow for the rest of his life. He never married, but the records show that one Clara Pryor, later Clara Pryor Marshall, having married Gideon Marshall's youngest son in 1882, listed Calhoun Reed as a witness at her wedding, and again as godfather to her first child. Calhoun died in the winter of 1901. 34 years in the valley. The river is still there. The cabin is not. It burned sometime in the 1940s, the way old things do when no one is left to tend to them. But on a particular flat rock that juts out over a slow bend in the river, someone has placed a small jar. Every year, the locals fill it with river water before the first frost. Nobody quite remembers why. Or perhaps they do, and they simply understand that some stories don't need explaining. They just need to be kept. Rest now. The letter is sealed. I'm Sedalia Voss, and I'll find you again next week. Good night.